the Reds, it's Talking Reds. I'm Gareth Roberts and I'm joined by Craig Hannan. Just before we did that, Craig did a version where he did the intro, which was news to me. Anyway, yeah, it's us again. We're talking about footy. We're talking about what we can talk about regarding footy. We did a good free podcast on this yesterday, by the way. I think you should have a go at that if you're looking for something to do. We got into it. We got into it in detail and thought it was a good one. There's also a clip in there of a show that Neil's been doing called What Next, where he had Rory Smith on. And Rory Smith has since written a very good article in the New York Times about sort of the knock-on effect of, you know, the Premier League maybe not, or Premier League clubs maybe not spending much money whenever football does resume, because, you know, they will have obviously lost a lot of revenue. Transfers may not be as big. Some clubs basically bank on, you know, clubs buying their players for big prices to survive. And, you know, that is the mad business model that we're at. There's loads of mad business models around football. And that, I think, is sort of part of the problem right now. And Craig, we were just talking before we got going. There's loads, you know, loads more stuff out there today, loads more people speaking, basically. But you kind of, you know, we're still not anywhere. And I know it's kind of reliant on what the government says at the weekends. And then you expect football to react after that. You know, it's the government that leads first, of course. There's the Germany situation as well. There's supposed to be a meeting tomorrow where Germany are expected to announce that football in Germany will go ahead up from the 15th of May. Again, sort of they've very much taken the lead. They've been testing their players. We've seen, obviously, Salomon Kalou's being suspended by Hertha Berlin for basically taking the piss out of the whole situation and walking in and shaking hands with everyone and walking in on a player being tested and singing about coronavirus and just basically coming across as a massive tit. But, you know, meanwhile, there are obviously some good brains there over in Germany in terms of getting the football back going again. And it looks like they will take the lead, really. And, you know, there's 3 Cologne players tested positive last week for coronavirus. And then there's a further 10 positive cases, but that's from a total of 1,724 tests carried out on players and staff from clubs in the top 2 divisions. So yeah, they're expected to go ahead with the idea of a return on May the 15th. And yeah, they've got a huge plan as well, which is detailed out there for you if you want to go and have a look about how football will return. On these shores, it still feels a little bit mad to me, I've got to be honest with you. You know, you've had Gordon Taylor from the PFA on Radio 4 today talking about, you know, possibly halves of football could be less than 45 minutes. And then it seems like the rest of football immediately went, nah, nothing to do with us, this. Like Gordon Taylor, it has to be said, is mad, and I don't get why he is in the job he is in. I don't get what's the good things that he's done in recent times that justify the salaries on, because he's basically gone on national radio this morning, chatted absolute shit, and everyone's distanced themselves from it immediately. And, you know, it's making a bit of a joke of the situation almost, I think, to even come out with that, because now obviously loads of people have reacted by going, this is just getting a bit silly now. You know, we're already having to swallow the fact that football is likely to return without fans, which in itself is mad if we're all being honest. But it seems that the very future of football and many clubs is under threat, and that's why they've got to do it. The money side, the economic side, and everything else, which is a bit unpalatable, but it is what it is. But you know, got Gordon Taylor saying that on one hand, displaying zero leadership, and makes you very question what the PFA are doing in all this. The FA are being questioned today in a very good piece by Mark Palios in The Guardian, which is well worth everyone's time, where he talks about, you know, the need for leadership, the need for quicker reaction to what's going on, because clubs are going to go out of business if things are left to stand like this. You got Rick Parry talking about a £200 million black hole in the Championship and lower down as well. And yet here we are, just still sort of knocking around every day trying to have a conversation about football. No one seems to truly be leading it, do they, Craig? You're sort of just getting bits and bobs from all over the show, from different organisations. And if anything, this whole situation has just shone a huge bright light on the administration and governmentship, is that even a word, of football anyway. And it's not what you're seeing is not great. It doesn't look good, does it?
No, I think the coronavirus has exposed gaps throughout the whole of football, hasn't it? Like, we look at economically and the financial impact that it's having, and the disparity between money at the top and money at the bottom, and how clubs are going to come out of all of this. But I think you're right. The lack of leadership's been the one that sort of, that I've been watching, and I've been waiting for someone to stand up at the forefront of this and say, right, this is what we're doing at the moment. This is what we'd like to achieve at the end of it, and this is how we're going to make that happen. I know it's a very difficult situation for them to sort of, to work our way out of, but it's just, there's mixed messages, and it's you say that you've Gordon Taylor standing up and he's saying something like this, and I want to know where the science behind that is. I want to know, like, is that what the PFA believe? Is that what, have they spoken to the Premier League about this? Is this just something that he's just said on the radio because it's come to his head in that moment? There's if you think about it in like normal business, or you think about it at the beginning of any project, you say, right, who's the stakeholders in all of this? Who are the people that we need to get involved, who know best in every sort of eventuality out of all of this? What are they saying? And speak to the people that know, and where the science is behind the research, and then you go, right, well, what's our message? What is our message here, and how we push that forward? How do we bring everyone on board? That's leadership, isn't it? And you're not seeing that from anyone at the Premier League, anyone at the PFA. It's just these little sort of like tidbits of info, or off the cuff shite that comes out of their mouth in these interviews. And then you've got, you mentioned it on the Free Show, you've got so many people sort of speaking to The Athletic, or speaking to whoever in the media, and they're not putting their name to these ideas. They're just throwing things out for their own self-interest. And as a football fan, like, to be honest, throughout all of this, I've tried not to read too much of it, because if you read every piece on coronavirus and how football is going to come out the other end of this, you're none the wiser. You have no idea what steps are being put in place, or who it is leading it, how they're going to make it happen, and it just stresses you out from a football fan's point of view who wants to go and watch a football team in the ground. Right, I know that's not going to happen, so the next thing, I want to watch football. Right, well, I have no idea how that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and who's making it happen, and that's the worry for me. Like, one of the things I watched last week on YouTube was SoccerX did this, the future of football, and they had different people. There was one from like the European Leagues Commission, and there's different people from around the world who sort of works with the different leagues. And at the end of it, there was no answers. There was a lot of uncertainty, which is fair enough in that they're not just having to talk about one league in this instance. They're talking about all of these leagues around Europe, and then the second leagues within these countries, and all of these stakeholders. It's a very difficult thing to talk about in a 1 hour video meeting. But the one thing that they did say, and it's something Rory Smith said, which I thought was really interesting, was that there's no one solution for every single person. One person can't come out and go, this is the solution for all of football, because there's so many different aspects, so many different leagues, so many different clubs within those leagues, that you need it. There's a different solution for every league, but it just feels like in this country, I'm none the wiser as to what that solution is.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the general thing. And look, I've got some sympathy for all the people that, I know I'm throwing some people under the bus, but we've got to have some sympathy for the decision makers in that, this no one's had to deal with this before. But equally though, when I'm looking at Germany and looking at German clubs, and I'm seeing like they've got a pandemic officer at a football club, I'm like, it feels like this has been thought out a bit more there than it has here. Do you know what I mean? And you're right to say what you said there about the different situations. I mean, for the Premier League is razzmatazz, huge amount of money, way more money than the other leagues. And look, it might work for the Premier League in terms of, fulfilling fixtures and getting them on the television as a way, to keep money coming in, as a way to not sort of break the contract with the TV companies and all that kind of stuff. But lower down the leagues, as Rick Parry was saying, and as so many owners of clubs have said as well, they're much more heavily reliant fans through the turnstiles, on people buying a beer or a coffee or whatever. I mean, anyone that follows Andy Holt on Twitter, the Accrington Stanley owner, there's reasons to love him, there's reasons to hate him, but he is very honest and he's telling an interesting story as he goes along. And, he's shared figures at times about, when a lot of away fans come and they buy a lot of beer, things like that make a difference at that level. And so all that's taken away, and there's a problem for them there, because if they play behind closed doors at that level, it's not going to make a big difference. They're not getting a huge amount of money off television companies anyway. So what's the answer there? And what do we say? Well, the Premier League's all right. We're Premier League fans, as in we're fans of a Premier League club. So what, to just fuck the rest of football then? I mean, I'm not comfortable with that myself. I mean, all the way through when we've been doing the Anfield app and going way back to when I was writing a fanzine, yes, first and foremost, I'm a Liverpool fan. I love Liverpool Football Club. I love everything about the Reds. But equally, though, I like footy, and I always have liked footy, and I've always gone to watch footy at different levels. So, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Tranmere Rovers, and that's why I read articles with Mark Palios, and then when I read them and come out the other side, I think, knows what he's talking about, that fella. Why does no one listen to him? Equally, I've got soft spot for various non-league clubs. I worry about what the future is for them. And no one seems to really be talking about it. I mean, you got the health secretary today, Matt Hancock, saying he's open to the idea of football returning in June. But the conversation, at least what I've seen, seems to be very Premier League focused about, getting games on the telly, that being good for the morale of the country and all that. I get that argument. But, non-league football is good for the morale of non-league fans. League One football is good for the morale of people who support a League One club. And there seems to be less of a conversation, to my mind, about those clubs, about the less sexier side of football, or even junior football as well. That's being affected. Is there any guidance towards, or any steps towards that coming back? Because you haven't got the issue around crowds there anyway. My son started playing with a team, and I was delighted to go and watch him. Made up that he finally plays football. He got a Man of the Match award, and he's been Man of the Match for 8 weeks. Because they pass it round to whoever's man of the, and I was like, well, that's got to be a record, son. You know what I mean? It's not a bad way to start your football career, is it? But he wants to go back. He wants to see his mates and stuff like that. So I don't know. I was trying to say it on the free show, and I'm trying to get it across there as well, but feels to me like there needs to be more joined up conversations, because as you say, it all just feels real scattergun at the moment. Different figures, different times, saying different things, different media. To me, right on the telly, I can see Rick Parry right now talking on Sky, Gordon Taylor this morning. They're saying different things. Gordon Taylor's talking about, what next from Gordon Taylor? Honestly, is he going to say like, oh yeah, so Liverpool's next match is meant to be against Everton. So how about Alisson Becker has a game of tennis against Richarlison, and whoever wins, they've won the derby. I mean, we need to retain some sense of what football is about, and football is played over 90 minutes, Gordon. So why are you going on national media, seemingly on your own, by the way, because everyone's distanced themselves straight away and chatting absolute shit? What next? Monkey tennis?
Like that's so one of the things I've just found it here. One of the things in that Soccerex meeting was that they said there's difficulties around different countries and their own governing bodies and what their decisions will be. There's different solutions under different jurisdictions, and dealing with prime ministers and governments is another thing that will have to come into play around this. So Gordon Taylor then saying, right, well, there's a possibility that we play 30-minute halves or whatever. He said shorter than 45 minutes. Well, he said that in an off-the-cuff comment on radio. So does that mean, is that the Premier League, or is that the whole of England, or is that something that he has discussed with the other governing bodies around Europe, where they're going, yeah, this is a good idea, or is this something he's just said, and then they'll all be listening and going, that's absolute bollocks. There's no science behind that. I think that's one of the problems. Like, what I liked about I didn't watch Rick Parry, I read the piece about it. What I liked about it was that it feels as if like this is what he's saying is all thought through. So
Yeah.
like obviously it's within his interests, because it's all around the EFL and that's literally his job. So it's within his interest. But like what he's saying, it's clear. So he's talking about promotion and relegation. This idea that people are saying around, or well, it's mostly the three clubs at the bottom or the five clubs that are fighting relegation at the bottom of the Premier League that seem to be in favour of no relegation this year. Well, what is the point in that?
Because where's that come from? How's that a thing?
Then suddenly you've got BT and Sky fuming because there's 5 or 6 big games at the bottom of the relegation between those fighting relegation, that suddenly those games mean nothing anymore, and so they mean nothing on the TV. So Sky have paid for these games and they mean nothing. So Sky will want some money back. There's even little things like I saw on the French football. There was talk around Lyon hadn't made Europe. And then players that played for Lyon were then thinking about the clauses within their contracts that basically meant that they made less if they hadn't reached Europe. But the players were arguing, well, the season didn't finish there. So how can we lose that amount of money? It goes right the whole way down, doesn't it? But at least with what Rick Parry's saying, like he's saying that would be a mess if there's no promotion and relegation. He basically says lawyers are going to get very wealthy. That's, suddenly then whenever that's brought into play, Leeds and West Brom, Fulham, they're looking at it thinking, well, that's a fucking joke. We would have made this amount of money. He talks about wage deferrals, cuts. He talks about players' contracts, the rescue package, the future of parachute payments. That's another one. So they go down. What happens with those payments? And look, it's so messy. But at least he's talking in a coherent way where it's obviously been discussed at that level. And then you've got other people like Gordon Taylor coming out and chatting absolute bubbles.
Yeah, jib Gordon Taylor off. I mean, there is sort of like grim self-interest being sown into the media, I think, all the time, not just from the sort of the shadowy, a Premier League source said, or, unnamed clubs say X or whatever. I mean, it was just on here before on Sky about, Aston Villa, I've got 6 home games. And how huge that would have been for them in their relegation fight. That was said just in the normal reporting, and I thought, that just feels like you're sewing it in there all the time. We can't possibly play the games on neutral venues. The governments have said you're not playing in your grounds. Basically, the governments have helped to guide this idea of the neutral venues. So that's where they've got to go.
See, you're right. Like we both were at Villa Park. We know the atmosphere they create and how that is a massive advantage for them. But also we're at a stage here where there's going to have to be a bit of give and take. There's going to have to be sort of meeting in the middle around every decision around football for it to happen. Because if it gets to a stage where we're waiting for there to be no one testing positive for coronavirus. We're waiting for it to be when fans can be in the stadium, so we get to be there. If we're waiting for it to be in our own grounds, so that these Premier League teams or teams around the world or whatever benefit from playing in front of their home crowd, we'll be waiting years. We'll be waiting years. So there has to be some sort of meeting in the middle from everyone, and I include Liverpool in that. I mean, it feels like a big meeting in the middle already that we won't get to see Jordan Henderson lifting the trophy in front of us.
That's the reality.
Then we're saying here, well, if to complete the season, if it's a case of football behind closed doors, games not Anfield, then okay. And I think everyone just sort of has to think in that way.
Well, the other side to this all, I mean, on the Anfield app, we are sort of getting into these debates in detail here on the What Next podcast, where, all this kind of stuff that me and Craig are talking about is discussed in even greater detail, including with guests like Rory Smith and stuff like that. But there is another side to all of this, which is just sort of how we all feel, how we feel as football fans. And that's always been sort of very much part of the Anfield app as well, how we feel, what we make of it all. That side of things, the emotional side of things, the football fan side of things, the stuff away from economic and business models and all that kind of stuff, which seems to be dominating a lot of the talk. And one of the most popular podcasts we've done over the last sort of year or so was one hosted by Ben Johnson called Flat Earthers, which came after the heavy defeat in the Nou Camp in the first leg of the Champions League semi-final. And it was sort of a bit of it was a conversation along the lines of, well, why do we do all this? Why are we into football? Why do we love it so much? Why do we let it rule our life so much? And it seemed to, chime with an awful lot of people, and a lot of people fed back that they loved it. So we've recreated it. We've got the cast back in to do another one to talk about how they feel about football during all this, how this is making them feel, their emotions around this. And here is a clip from the Flat Earthers 2 podcast.
I'd already started putting this whole thing in the camp of, I'm addicted to this and it's unhealthy. And everything else in my life that I'm addicted to that's unhealthy, I'm sort of trying to sort out. So I need to reassess what I'm doing properly. And so I reckon by the time we were going to the final, and I remember even when the tickets fell through, maybe I was kidding myself a little bit doing the whole, we'll just get them, we'll be fine, we'll be all right, we'll be fine. But even when we didn't get them, it was just like, I think I'd already changed my relationship with it all a bit. Do you know what I mean? I think I'd already made the decision that it's not going to be like this going forward. So I didn't have that huge dip that you had in the summer because I think I'd already decided it.
I think part of why I reckon if last season, John, if Liverpool just had an 80-point season, had come second, but had never been in the title race, but everything else plays out as it does. The 4-3 against Barcelona, the Madrid tickets fall through. I don't think you're anywhere near as angry about the circumstance. Yeah. I think it was because you didn't get, and I completely understand this because I got it, and I didn't know I was gonna get it until I got it. Like I didn't realize I could barely function for the 10 minutes after the Origi scores. I couldn't stop crying, and I was really surprised. And everyone I looked at looked to be broadly speaking in the same boat. Like it was an unbelievable outpouring of emotion, and I don't think we knew exactly how pent up with all of that we were until Origi sticks it in the back of the net. Until you know that you now, having just had the lived experience of 2 European seasons and this one long league season, we're getting the payoff. And I don't think we knew exactly what it meant. I did something on the stage in Madrid beforehand. One of the things I did say was, listen, I did Kiev last year, and I was saying on the stage, and last year it was great to be in Kiev, and we were talking about how brilliant this side is, and this is all a monument to them, and it's all amazing, win or lose. And I was saying, but this year, they don't fucking win, I can't get back up on a stage and do something like this again if they don't win. And it was the first time when I was doing that, I was still wrecked from the night before, and I was just improving, as I do with most of that stuff. And as I was saying it, I was thinking, this is real, that you really think this. You really think if they don't win this here today, you're going to find it really, really hard because of everything else. But I think the flip side of that is because everything, the 2 European seasons, the 97 points, they're not getting the payoff. And then when the Origi shot hits the net, everyone knows we've got the payoff. And I reckon if they'd have had an 80-point season, you hadn't have lived the Newcastle away game where I was genuinely worried about 3 of you in the boozer. It's not an exaggeration. I was worried about 3 people in the boozer. There was a point I turned round and Cope was sat on the floor with his head in his hands, facing away from the screen. And I remember thinking, this.
Okay, so that is a clip from the second of our Flat Earthers podcast. Craig, you can explain a little bit more about the concept of this one and what it's all about.
So the one from last year, it came out, it was exactly a year ago on Saturday, and it came after the Barcelona game, and it was essentially a group therapy session between Neil, Paul and Ben. Now, it's gone on to be our most popular podcast ever, which is fucking mad. Consider it's not around current football. It's not around Liverpool winning the European Cup or whatever. And it was born out of Ben Jono watching a Netflix documentary about flat earthers, where essentially a group of flat earthers decided that within their community they were going to raise money for to prove that the earth was flat. And so throughout the documentary, they raised this money, and at the end of it all, once they look into it and the science behind it, they realise that actually the earth is curvy as fuck. And so at the end of it, the main protagonist asked the question, say you lose faith in this thing, what then happens to my personal relationships in the community? What's the benefit for me doing that? Will the mainstream media welcome me back? Mainstream people welcome me back? No, they couldn't care less. But now I've lost all of my friends in this community built around flat earth. it becomes a question of identity. Who am I in this world, and how can I define myself through this struggle? And so in part two, Flat Earthers, the three of them basically discuss, Neil missing the home leg of the Barcelona game, the greatest game that Anfield's ever seen. Through, you'll find out. Ben Jono missing out on going to Madrid. You'll find out why. Paul Cope exactly the same, and sort of this idea that this is a leisure activity. Essentially, all of this is a leisure activity, but so much of their life revolves around this one leisure activity and what's going on around Liverpool FC. And they sort of ask, is it all worth it? It's brilliant. It's about religion. It's about football fandom, and it'll make you laugh. And make sure you watch the first one as well beforehand. So watch part one of it and then part two. They're both on the Anfield Wrap at the moment.
Yeah, and we've been doing loads more stuff as well. Listen, I just had a quick look then to see if there's anything else I could remotely lift myself to talk about in the football headlines, and there just isn't. I mean, people were saying that they wanted us to carry on with talking Reds every day. Tell you what, I mean, I get it, and I love doing it myself, and I love seeing, one of the other lads from the Anfield Wrap and having a chat. Well, yeah, you, Craig, yeah, obviously. But it's just so mad at the moment, isn't it? But we are carrying on all the way through, and some of the stuff I think we put out. Obviously, I would say this, but it's been good, it's been great, and I think we've done well in a bad situation, really, and a lot of the feedback that we're getting from our subscribers has been along the same lines. We're just trying to get stuff out there for people that do still want to listen, that do want to hear the serious debates, but also the lighter stuff, that do want recommendations for, ways to get a little footy fix, which is one of our shows where we watch documentaries that are freely available out there and review them and tell them whether, tell you whether you should get involved with them or not. Been doing them all the way through as well. And like I say, lighter stuff as well, just sort of having a bit of a crack, answering questions off the internet like we always do on AFQ. For people who do subscribe, they'll know that. For people who don't, it's simply that we sending questions to the Anfield Wrap's Twitter and we just answer them, and they're mad. They can be on anything, but it's just a bit of a crack. It's a reason to have an ale, to watch something, a little bit of an escape. And I really like the I can't remember what it's called now. We done a video one, didn't we, which we're going to be doing more of, which again is just us answering questions, but on the spot. That's what it's called. And that's worked really well as well, I think, in terms of just being a bit of light relief from the most heaviest of situations, which is what we're currently in, let's be honest. And we've also a new one out this week as well called The Treble, which is we talk about three things in our Liverpool lives that are important to us. So it could be a programme, it could be a scarf, it could be a shirt. It's something that sort of sparks a special memory for you in your Liverpool support and life. So all our different contributors will be doing those things. We're recording some more of those this week as well, some already out there. So yeah, get on that as well. I think we've done really, really well to reach this time, Craig. So I'm going to call it there. This has been today's Talking Reds. Check out all the stuff I was talking about. Check out the website as well, where Josh is still soldiering away, putting content up there as well, written content. So there's written content, there's podcasts, there's videos. We'll keep on going as long as you keep on watching, listening and reading. Up the fucking Reds.